All right, so I'm here with Randy Carothers
Yeah.
from OSS Suppressors, and you're the marketing manager, right?
Yeah.
Cool. What does OSS stand for? Actually, I didn't even think about asking that, but I don't think I know.
That is a good question.
Okay.
So, in the in the past, I mean, I think personally, if you're going to ask me personally, I think it's a little geeky. But
Yeah, yeah.
in the past, the previous company was Operators Suppressor Systems, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. I'm not an operator. The whole operator, scene and whatnot. It's kind of I don't know, a running joke around the office a little bit.
Yeah.
In 2016, new management and new ownership came in.
Okay.
The company actually went from Operator Suppressor Systems and had a legal name change to just OSS Suppressors,
Okay, so
LLC. What does OSS stand for? I don't know. Optimal, awesome.
sure. So it's
With an O.
it's basically like it's almost like a DBA, like a doing business as OSS. You kept the acronym. I got it. That's what
Yeah.
I was. It was just really a curiosity. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. So I guess just getting into this, like, what's your role at OSS, and kind of what brought you to the company? Like, what's your background?
Oh, so I actually got brought on. So before I got this job, I'd worked in the industry a little bit, just doing, believe it or not, graphic design and
Cool.
just kind of marketing kind of stuff like that. Got a little bit more popular. Started working for a few different companies. The old company actually contracted me to come in, like, build a catalog. And
Oh, the prior iteration of
prior,
OSS.
correct.
Okay, got it.
And then eventually that turned into a full-time position, and maybe about 6 months later, I think I got brought on in summer of 2015. So
Cool.
maybe about 6 months later, management and everything changed, and position just kind of evolved.
Okay.
Taking over different things. Just doing different roles in marketing, and now here we are today, marketing manager.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
As far as what I do, I mean, if you've seen the videos, I got elected, I should say, to be the guy on the videos. But video production. But we also do all of our own, like, graphic design stuff in house. So we design our own catalogs and a lot of the
Cool.
stuff on the website. I'm part of that. So.
Should be a pretty diverse role. That's cool. I always kind of, I like to ask folks what they do and how they get into stuff. And you really never know. Just because we're in the firearms industry or, the technology industry, engineering industries, people come from all backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school not for this, right? I didn't
Sure.
even go to school for marketing, right? I wanted to go to law school.
Okay.
So that changed, and when I had I guess a passion and drive for kind of doing marketing, one thing led to the next. So things
That's
changed.
cool.
Yeah.
This is something I like to ask. It's just a curiosity. So, when did you get into silencers and why? And was that like a personal thing before you were professionally involved? And what was your first experience like?
Oh, no. So my first experience with cans, before this job, again, I did some stuff on the side for a while. And like a lot of people, I think, in this profession, for me, it was a hobby. It's fun.
Sure.
Right? I like shooting. A lot of people like shooting, hunting, and stuff. I grew up doing all that kind of stuff. Started shooting suppressors a few years before this job. So maybe 2012-ish is, I think, about 20 in 2012. I think I had my first experience with the silencer Saker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and and then from there, I mean, I built a few ARs. I've been into guns, but it's just kind of been a passion. And then one thing led to the next. So
Okay, no, that's cool.
So, yeah.
It's interesting. The Saker, that's a very well-known silencer, pretty prolific.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good experience. Good first experience.
No, I thought it was a good. No, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
And I think me, like a lot of other people, right? Especially I was young, I was in college. You end up, kind of building your dream gun in your mind, right?
Sure.
And so I had picked my can, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
I jumped around too. I mean, originally I was like gonna maybe get like a Gemtech Halo, and I was like, no, I'm gonna get the AAC M42,000.
Oh, the M42,000,
Oh, then I'm gonna get
yeah.
a Saker, and I like Silencer Co. And I had the opportunity to shoot quite a few of these cans, and then eventually,
Yeah.
working at OSS.
That's
The-
cool.
The cool thing about working at a suppressor company, a lot of people don't know that, but you get to shoot a lot of the competitor stuff out there, as well as you get to go to shows. And honestly, a lot of the guys in the silencer industry were pretty nice. We're pretty easy to get along with.
Yeah.
I like to hang out with like the Yankee Hill guys. We're at a show together, or whatnot. We'll trade each other's stuff and shoot each other's stuff, and it's pretty cool. So
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Yeah, you mentioned Yankee Hill. I just talked to Chris, and he and his brother, they're good guys, and it's cool. It's cool to it's almost like everyone kind of likes it as a hobby, but when you are in the business, you still kind of have that hobby mentality when you get together and discuss the passions. So
yeah.
that's fun. I guess we don't have to get too deep into the history of the company. You mentioned some of the changes. I know that you had some major product changes with your rifle silencer, and that you, from what I understand, it became lighter, a little more simple. I think in some of the parts. Did that change coincide with the corporate change?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when new management came on board in 2016, essentially what we were working with was a multiple piece platform, right? So even they had two options. They had over the barrel models,
like a reflex design.
yeah, like a reflex
Okay.
design that came in two pieces, right? And you could take them apart, and it was like one of the few rifle cans. It might be one of the only ones that I'm aware of. You could take the rifle can all the way apart, scrub the coils.
Was it
and the
hexagonal,
inside.
maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah, hexagonal.
People say hexagon is octagon.
Octagon,
right?
maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's 8 sides,
Okay.
right? We were told. I mean, there were certain. You say 8 sides, right? I remember hearing, well, it's 8-sided for mirage mitigation. That ended up being not really so true. So there were some things we were looking at with that older design, and then I'd say we fine-tuned them a little bit, made some inline changes, made them a little bit stronger, passing some government tests with that older design, and then pushing into the commercial market with more focus. A lot of the feedback we got from a lot of customers, and not just like commercial guys, but law enforcement, military, they were just complex. A lot of parts. They were a little confusing. The extra parts meant extra machine time, so they were expensive to produce. Our margins weren't great on those things. I mean, those multiple piece suppressors. I think the old company. I mean, they were trying to sell them for like $1,400. They cost more to make than like our new stuff retails for, right? I mean, they were insanely expensive. I mean, that's why.
Interesting.
That's why they were like $1,800. Right,
Sure.
at
Yeah,
some
I
point.
agree. They were high, if I
18,
recall,
9
yeah.
Yeah, they're really expensive. And then some of the flush mount systems, which are just traditional regular suppressors, even those were less expensive than the 2-piece over the barrel systems. But the flush mount ones were longer, they were heavier, all these things. And we knew right away, just from feedback, we needed to kind of build a QD.
Maybe
version.
simplify it.
Definitely simplify it. Now, blowback was a thing, right? And not to everybody, and that's fine. But people hate blowback. They hate back pressure. But I mean, kind of the saying was, you might hate blowback, but you don't hate it $1,500 bad, right? You're not gonna bite that extra bullet just to have no blowback. So we knew that blowback, it mattered to people, but the perk is what it kind of needed to be. So we wanted to be more competitive with weight, more competitive with length, a whole lot more simple in terms of its maintenance, in terms of its mounting situation. We need to simplify everything, come out with a QD design that was affordable, didn't break the bank, and flow through, and having no blowback was just a benefit or a perk.
That's cool. No, that answers my question, I think, and to give folks an idea, I had a question that this is, I guess, somewhat my observation, but I kind of wanted to, I don't know, gut check it with you, and also for the listeners. So, to preface this, I have not shot your silencers before. I've seen them, but I haven't shot them. So, what I've noticed is like the principal design goal that I've observed when looking at your rifle silencers, when I've disassembled them at the various trade shows and things that I've seen,
Right.
is it so it looks like you're attempting to give an alternate flow path to the gas away from the bore axis, and you're trying to make that flow path fairly arduous so that the gas has to really work to get through it, and so it can stay in the system as long as possible, but also not influence the bore axis with turbulence. So what you're doing is you're giving the gas a place to go, so you're reducing quote unquote back pressure or restrictive flow through the bore, but at the same time you're stripping turbulence away from the primary bore so that as not to disrupt the projectile path. Am I getting that goal right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Maybe this is how I would phrase it, right? The flow-through design, flow-through technology works by allowing a very large portion of those expanding gases to flow through an alternate path, like you're referring to, but to basically allow the linear expansion to keep going long enough and allow those gases to separate from the bore line, but then expand naturally. And what I mean by that is they're not hitting dead ends and compressing. It's expanding naturally, right? And then through the system. And that the reason that there's helical, these radial or helical cuts, in the layers of the suppressor is to give the gas more expanding time before it vents out the front. If we cut all those channels straight, it'd be loud.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when I mentioned the arduous path, I guess that's what I meant. It's arduous in that it's difficult, in that the gas has a more difficulty to get out of the silencer quickly. But at the same time, you brought up a very good clarification that I appreciate. And this could be done with a reflex design, but it may not be as efficient as yours. I was thinking about that because for those of people listening that don't know, a reflex
over the barrel.
silencer goes back over the barrel. So the silencer body is forward of the muzzle, and aft of the muzzle you have a larger diameter silencer that travels further aft toward the shooter, and what that does is it creates a volume that is available for expansion, and unlike the OSS system, pardon us, there's some shooting going on next to us here. We are at an active range. So the OSS system allows the gas to take advantage of additional volume but not be trapped.
Correct. So there are some reflex designs out there, and essentially you just have large expansion chambers on that blast.
So it works for maybe the first couple shots, but sustained full auto fire, you may the gas dynamics may result in more blowback, whereas yours, I think you continuously vent.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with ours, each round, a major portion of those gases, basically the stuff that gets shredded or separated right in that initial blast or expanding chamber with our cans, gets to continue to expand and vent forward. Vent out of the system, forward, away from the shooter, away from their ears, away from,
Yeah, that's, from, as an engineer and someone who studies gas dynamics and impulsive loading, I find the concept to be very intriguing and also actually really cool. And in theory, I see it working very well. It's interesting. Obviously, you'll balance higher noise at the muzzle with lower back pressure, just because physics are physics.
Right.
If you had your druthers, you would make your can as long as possible, and by the time the gas finished its toroidal path or spiral path, it would be so cool that it would be super quiet, but we just don't have that luxury. So I guess you have to balance your length with,
people at the end of the day, they don't want to, wield a 3-foot long suppressor, right?
So and at the end of the day, I guess your silencer might be a little louder at the muzzle than some of the competitors, but, with the low back pressure, might be quieter at the ear or just as quieter at the ear with the extra benefit of no fouling, right?
Yeah, well, that's what testing has shown.
Right.
Even if you look at the silencer shop videos, right? Sometimes people look at those and they're just looking at those muzzle numbers that populate on the screen. But if you look at the at-ear average, and then you're comparing our can against a similar sized can, right? So it wouldn't be fair to compare our 7.62 can, which is only 7.2 inches long, which is actually pretty short 7.62 can.
It is.
And it's only 1.6 inches in diameter. I mean, it's short and it's small because that's really a CSAS requirement parameter we were stuck with, right? The can had to be on a compact
And that's
semi-automatic.
for this gun right here, right?
Correct, yeah.
This HK.
So, I mean,
okay.
ideally, you might, well, maybe it should be bigger and longer to be more quiet. Well, that specific can, well, it couldn't be for this weapon system, right? So, but if you're going to compare our 7.62 against, a 9-inch long, not to pick on SIG, I mean, I think they make great stuff, but maybe a SIG 30 cal can, which some of them are much larger and longer, bigger in diameter, well, obviously they're going to be quieter. But if you're comparing one can against another, it's similar in size, and you're just looking at ear numbers, yeah, we're generally quieter at the ear, if not as quiet, but we are generally a little louder at the muzzle. We don't hide behind that. At the end of the day, I haven't heard an argument that was a good one for why you needed to be quiet at the muzzle, unless, as far as the military is concerned, I mean, we even did a video on this. The sonic crack of a round downrange is the same, regardless.
It's very loud. Yeah, in excess of 150 decibels, probably.
Yeah, well, at least when we were doing 5.56, it was metering around 130-ish.
Okay.
About 133 decibels downrange at really any distance, right?
Interesting. I wonder where the microphone was placed.
Well, the microphone was placed maybe about, if you watch the video, maybe about, I don't recall exactly, but I want to say maybe about 10 yards or so away from where the round was passing in front of us.
So
we were behind a barricade.
So there might have been some decay too on the decay of the pressure waves that we measure with the decibels is exponential. So the further you get away, it drops off very quickly.
But in either case,
sure,
if you're shooting past our meter and our meter is placed perpendicular to the bore to the bullet path, right? And the meter's over here and the bullet's going this way, and the meter's maybe 10 yards away from that path. We stepped back from 25 yards to 100 and even 400, and the number was the same with our can, a competitor can, and interestingly, the number was the same with and without a can.
It should be.
Right. The difference was I could audibly hear the blast when there was no suppressor on.
Yeah, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
right.
Like I said, for folks who don't understand silencers, they suppress a weapon system, and there's many sources of noise. You have the rapid expansion of the hot gas that interacts with the atmosphere out of the muzzle that the silencer is containing. But with the supersonic projectile, the crackdown range is another source of noise, and that's going to be continuous, really regardless of the of the round, unless of course you have subsonic, but that's a whole different. That's a whole different thing.
Like with the new 22 can, right? I mean, we knew that had to be quiet at the muzzle as well. People shoot 22 to be really quiet, especially subs. I mean, I want like a backyard gun, right? I mean, that's really it. So
that's a good point. And gosh, I don't want to deviate too much, but I'll tell you what. Hold that thought about the new 22 silencer, because I want to ask a couple of questions first. But there's some good questions about that. I think people want to know. Kind of circling back to some of the product designs. Do you guys? How closely are you looking at different materials, and what kind of steels did you settle on, and are you looking at anything else right now?
That's a great question. So for those that are in the know in the silencer industry, I mean, it's evolved over the past few years. I mean, it used to be, I think a lot of people were just using maybe heat-treated 17.4 on their baffle stack, and then people stepped it up. Companies, Inconel became kind of a standard, right? Inconel blast baffle to fully Inconel, every baffle. Mm-hmm. And you got Silencer Co. and some of these others that come along and say Stellite, which is basically cobalt. It's a kind of cobalt, really tough materials. Some of the older designs at OSS, we've played with it all. We've tried to see if we could get away with aluminum. We've played with it all. But some of the older models had Inconel in it. What we found is that because of the different kind of pressure that we are dealing with, we didn't need to use Inconel or Stellite, right? And what I mean by that is, we put, for instance, when we were designing this QD suppressor, we had our own thresholds and objectives, our own, I guess, spec that you could call it, things that we needed to be able to meet before we brought it to market. And not just in terms of like weight, length, but weight, length, sound suppression, mounting system, durability, all that, right? And for durability and full auto rated, we needed it to pass the SOCOM reliability stress test.
That's the firing schedule that
schedule.
a lot of the I know Rugged uses that. I know
Rugged,
a couple of other manufacturers use that. It's like I forgot the exact schedule, but it's like a certain amount of mags, then semi, then full, and then you change.
Semi, full, burst, semi, full, semi, and then that last mag is a mag dump, full auto mag dump, and then that's one cycle. You got to do that like 6 times, right? To basically pass. So we learned that because the majority of the pressure in our system is venting through it, there isn't as much heat, and the key is heat and pressure are the enemy with suppressors, right?
Absolutely.
There isn't as much heat and pressure through the bore line where our deflectors are, which are actually doing a little bit of trapping, right? There are technically, I mean, you could call them baffles. There are technically smaller diameter baffles in the middle of our can, right? We could get away with 17.4 heat-treated stainless. We could go through that SOCOM endurance test consecutive twice, one after another, without any erosion issues. And the reason is, well, because we're venting off a ton of that heat and pressure. So why would we put Inconel in it if it's just going to raise the price for the end user?
Well, I mean,
that's why we avoid it.
You bring up a good point. It is important for silencer consumers to realize that the reason why Inconel, which is actually it's a high nickel steel alloy. Relatively machinable, or an alloy like stellite, which is not very machinable, very tough, but usually cast. Things like marigine steels, like the energetic armament guys are using that C30 or C300 marigine steel that is ITAR controlled and used in rocket motor casings. All these products or these steel alloys are meant to undergo
insane heat and pressure
and erosion under very, very high temperature. And you're right. If you can control the design case, and with your designs, you have essentially changed your conditions. You're changing your design conditions to where your threat condition is lower temperature. You may not need those materials, and that's engineering. So that's great. That's great. I mean, so that's cool. That makes sense.
I mean, at the end of the day, right? And at the end of the day, the end user, be it military, law enforcement, or even in the commercial market, I mean, people get hung up on materials because at the end of the day, they're wondering one thing: is this going to work for my needs? If I'm doing a lot of full auto, or if I'm not doing a lot of full auto, right? I mean, there's some companies out there that don't do anything. I mean, look at Q, right? I mean, they make great cans as well, but a lot of them are fully tie cans, right? I mean,
sure.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, for what you're using your can for, is it going to stand up to the job?
No, absolutely.
Right? And that's why it's like, well, why would we make it cost more for some marketing reason, right? I mean, no, we can get away with heat-treated 17.4, so that's what we're going to go with.
No, yeah, I understand that. I have a technical question about that. You may not know. I'm like, let's say, for example, let's something simple in full auto, an M16 chambered in 5.56. Let's say you're doing a full 30 round mag dump. Let's say you use something like an old school AAC M4 2000, and then you used one of your cans. Have you guys measured the temperature difference?
Yeah, maybe not on that firing schedule, but let me give you a scenario to kind of answer that question.
Okay.
We had a video, I think it's still on our YouTube channel. It's essentially, if it's not, I mean, we should do another one, but basically it's a side-by-side comparison.
Okay.
Now it's with the older design.
Okay.
So it's the octagonal thing. Same technology. That's in our new stuff right now. Essentially the same thing, except ours is more simplified right now. But basically the firing schedule on that video, it's shot with a FLIR, so you can see the temperature.
So you can see the temperature, okay.
Right? And it's a side-by-side, and it's just one magazine, but the round count is just 1 round a second, right?
Got it,
so
which gets it pretty hot.
Boom, 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 right? By about the 30 round mark, you're watching the competitor can. And they're heating up, and they're close to the 600 degree mark.
Okay, Fahrenheit.
Okay. 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Halfway, they're at about 300. halfway through that, right?
Okay.
Well, at the halfway point, and even at the end, at the very end of ours, we're just under the 300-degree mark, right?
Really?
So what does that mean? Well, what it technically means is on that weapon system with that firing schedule, that can against the other can was heating up at about half the rate.
Sure.
What does that mean to an end user? Well, I could say, well, they heat up at about half the rate. Well, if you're just doing a mag dump, full auto mag dump, I mean, the FLIR tops out at like 1,200 and something degrees Fahrenheit. So beyond that, I don't know how hot they're getting.
Sure.
Right? I do know that ours heat up slower, and they also cool off faster. Right? Usually it's about half the rate, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is kind of what I tell people. Look, 400 degrees is still going to burn you, man. If you're worried about heat because of erosion issues, that's one thing. If you're worried about heat because of mirage covers or whatnot, I mean, that's another thing. But, this idea that some people have where they're like, oh, it's going to be cooler. Well, I don't know if it's going to be like suppressor's a suppressor. It's going to be really hot.
Yeah, they definitely, I agree. They definitely get hot. I guess I was more asking just to think about, the design parameters and if your design allowed the temperature to, I don't know, maybe the temperature to one moment. Yeah. Maybe the temperature to peak maybe at a lower threshold so that you know what I mean?
Yeah, so some of the older models had like aluminum sleeves on them, right?
Oh, okay.
Aluminum melts after 1,200 degrees.
Yes.
Right? So as long as you didn't shoot it like crazy, it wasn't a problem. Well, it starts getting soft at around 1,200 degrees. So
its yield strength drops significantly. Sure.
Yeah. So grade 9 Ti versus grade 5 titanium. So some of the coils in our current system, they're not all 17-4 heat treated. Only the main part is, and only some of those layers. The other layers on the outside where the gas is cooler, we can use titanium. Now, titanium has a melting point, as does heat treated 17-4.
Sure. And it holds heat a little longer than steel does,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all these things are a factor. At the end of the day, when we're doing any development on new products, we subject it to the SOCOM test and then do an inspection.
It's interesting. There is a lot of talk in the industry about belt fed rated and full auto rated and But I really like test standards.
I don't know what that means.
It doesn't mean anything.
Problem.
It doesn't mean anything.
Well, what do you mean by that?
But the SOCOM firing schedule.
That's our standard.
That several manufacturers like you and SIG and Rugged and a few others are using is good to know because it's funny that a lot of them aren't publishing that. They should publish that because, in my opinion, as a silencer consumer, I want to know
I would think
I don't care what your silencer is made of. If it's passing the schedule,
that's my issue. No offense, don't get me wrong. I like Rugged cans, and I actually have a pretty good relationship to the Rugged guys. But that's my that's my issue with this whole it's belt fed rated. Well, what do you mean? Belt fed 9 mil? Like, how many of those are there? What firing schedule? What?
Well, I think they probably meant center fire rifle 5.56 or 7.62.
Well, all their stuff is belt fed rated. So, and don't get me wrong. I've been to ranges with them, and they run belt feds, and they run really well, and they beat the crap out of their cans. But my problem is, what do you mean by belt fed rated versus full auto rated? And there's no definition.
Well, it is interesting. There is a SIG can. I was at a SHOT Show talking with Mr. Hollister, and they had a belt fed can, and I don't know what the military standard is for that, if there is one or not, if there's a belt fed schedule.
So if your audience could see right now, we have this belt fed can right here. This is a new can that we've released. It's released because of emerging interest.
Okay.
We've sent a bunch of them. I don't remember who. That's why I'm not the military sales guy or whatever. But they are developing that standard.
Oh, okay.
Fed,
so
right?
it's also in development now.
Well, the standard.
The standard,
yeah. There's interest for programs requiring belt feds to be optimized for suppressors or to get.
Is there do you know what agency or entity within the government is developing that?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, well, that's really neat.
All I know is we designed it for that reason. Right?
Okay, cool.
Now, interestingly enough, belt fed manufacturers like FN, right? They have a firing schedule that their barrel is rated for.
Sure.
Let me tell you what, man. In terms of durability, most cans will survive the barrel. the barrel.
Sure.
Schedule.
And if
it's
you're
not a big deal. But as far as when things get hot, when they get, I guess if you're in a combat situation, and I wouldn't know. But people tend to get a little happy with their trigger finger, right, and whatnot. So the can's definitely got to withstand quite a bit of prolonged belt-fed fire, and that's why this can is bigger in diameter and it's heavier and it's stronger. It's for that like super abuse. But
that's like the SIG can I saw at SHOT. It was a tank. It was huge, and Hollister was telling me, he was like, he's like, this is a belt-fed can, bro. And I was like, okay. And I looked at it and I was like, well, it certainly looks the part. I don't have any technical information to make that judgment.
Yeah, and
at all.
Unfortunately, I couldn't even tell you, this is our belt-fed can, but I couldn't tell you what, because again, I'm not involved in the government side of things, but what their firing schedule is, I don't have off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, no, I think that's informative for listeners. It's informative for me. It's interesting. I think when I think about take like an Ares Shrike upper, you put on an M16.
Right.
You got a gas tube or something, right? You're gonna melt your gas tube.
Right, and I think they're designed in a way that that's the first point of failure for a reason.
Kind of the weak point, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we really covered a lot of the questions I had just indirectly, just the way the conversation went. I was going to ask you about how you test your silencers with durability and on-off cycles, repeatability, and it seems like if you guys are going for contracts with SOCOM schedule, then
exactly. So you mentioned repeatability. Well, again, H&K submitted with our can for the CSAS, but so what do we have to do to meet precision requirements? Well, we had to meet the sniper contract. So what's our requirement? Well, it's very similar to the CSAS and SDMR requirement. So there's an average mean radius, there's an average MOA with and without the can.
Cool.
That is in our quality control spec.
Okay.
Because again, we got to deliver for this contract.
Are you shooting every can you make? Do you test fire them? I know some people do, some people don't.
We used to.
You used to? Okay.
We used to. Our quality controls improved. I mean, at the end of the day, at some point, you're just gonna do random sampling, and that's kind of where we're moving right now. Early on with the QD design, right, and when we were producing lower numbers and whatnot, test fired every one of them. I think we've moved past that random sampling. I mean, the average. Don't quote me on this. It's in our precision video, but. Where I actually say it. I think the average group size or the average shift distance, because we have a POI shift requirement too.
Sure.
But the average shift distance with our can that we do in our quality control, and this is testing dozens or maybe even 100 at sometimes cans at once on one platform. Right, and you're just looking at and usually you get just a hole this big on the paper
because of the oscillation. Sure, yeah.
So, but the average shift distance I want to say is about between 0.6 and 0.9 MOA, something like that. And that's 0.4 and 0.9 MOA, but it's very small. And usually that shift distance is straight down. So,
and that's basically, from you're changing the mode shape of vibration of the barrel by adding weight.
Yeah, you're going to get that anyway.
Yeah, right? You're going to get it anyway.
You're going to get POI shift regardless.
So what you don't want is some kind of crazy flyer because you have turbulence in the bore or something crazy.
And it kind of goes back to earlier. We got competitors that say minimal and repeatable, POI shift. Well, I'm going, well, what the heck does minimal mean? I mean, is minimal to you 6 inches? Because that wouldn't pass our quality.
It is good to have standards.
Right.
You come back to that again. I do concur that it's important when you talk about performance. It's almost like the saying. I like to use the saying, "Don't just talk about it, be about it." And if you're going to make a claim, back it up with some kind of metric so that people can objectively understand.
Yeah, and we don't have a choice. We have to, right? We're already kind of disrupting a little bit because we're doing something very different. I deal with enough skeptics and critics that haven't shot our stuff. You deal with enough people online that are like, really? Is it all just a bunch of marketing nonsense or is it real? Last thing I want to do is not be transparent. Right?
Yeah, you don't want to get in that rabbit hole, I guess.
And back up everything that we claim about our stuff.
So I know you're not the military contract guy, and if you don't know the answer, that's cool. I was just curious. I saw this HK right here. It's a 762 HK, and I know you guys won that CSAS contract. Are there some other ones that you've won?
Well, internationally, yes, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
Is it Tavor? Is that the bullpup?
So that's not a contract.
Okay.
That's That's a partnership with IWI.
Okay.
That's what
Israeli Weapon Industries. Is that no? Is that right? Am I? That's I am. No, am I? I might be
IMI,
butchering
I don't know.
butchering something. I have any of their firearms, but
Hey,
I feel like they make the Desert Eagle, and
yeah.
people are probably cringing right now. They're probably listening to this.
No,
Oh
they
God.
Yeah, so with the Tavor, the X95, and some of the other weapon systems with IWI, they I will say they were impressed through their testing and evaluation with our cans. They liked us enough. I mean, I go to a lot of the demos with these guys. They're great guys. That basically they wanted it to be like an official IWI can, which is just our suppressor. Just has a
That's
custom.
cool.
That's it. Yeah, it has their logo on it.
Because bullpups are like super hard to control the gas on, and if you don't have blowback and like a lot of back pressure, then it works. So that's cool.
And coincidentally, like the X95, for example, you know, a lot of people really love those things. I think they're pretty awesome, pretty fun to shoot. Typically, bullpups can be really awfully loud when you're talking about numbers at the ear.
For real. The ejection port's
the
like right there.
That breech is right by your ear,
right there,
right by your face. Especially if you're a lefty, right?
Yeah.
Blowback would be right there. If you're comparing like a 16-inch Tavor or X95 to a 16-inch anything else, fill in the blank, 5.56, the X95 has some of the quietest at-ear numbers that we've ever seen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and weird, oddly so, even though the ejection port's right there. But it's great. It's great. And then it's interesting, and this is something people don't understand. You know, operating system has so much to do with sound.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't understand that. So, like, piston gun, right? Bullpup piston gun. That's what the X95 is. Well, the Steyr AUG is a piston gun, which is also bullpup. Shoot a Steyr AUG with our can or anybody else's, I kid you not, the DB is in like the 150s.
It's
so
like
loud. One
loud.
of the loudest platforms.
It's so
Still
loud.
a piston gun. Now,
Yeah.
the way their piston design is very different. The way their whole gun is very different. But operating system has a ton of influence when you're talking about measuring at the shooter's ear.
Dude, yeah, I built a 10.5-inch upper. I call it the J Blaster because it's a superlative arms piston bleed off, and it's super quick. It has a super high bolt velocity, and I run it suppressed, and I know it's going to be loud, and I wear ears, but it's like one of the most reliable guns I've ever built because it can't get dirty because it vents, and it's great, and it's like it's just one of those things, and you know there's trade-offs, and so yeah, I mean hosts are important. I want to get into we're doing pretty good on time actually. I have a couple of things. There's one company I've met with, and I saw them, Next Gen Defense. Those guys have a very similar conceptually. The design is very similar in concept to yours, where they're stripping gases and they're putting them to the outer circumference, and you know it's a little different in the geometry they're using, but I don't know. Have you seen those? And what's your opinion on those?
Well, some of those guys came from OSS.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ernie, is that the owner?
Yeah,
I met him.
You met Ernie?
I met Ernie.
Yeah,
He's a nice guy. He's not from OSS, is he?
No.
Okay.
Not Ernie.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, kind of similar design. I mean, I've shot it. I mean, I don't want to trash other companies or anything.
No, I was just wondering.
I've shot it. I mean, feedback from what I hear, just because you know we do like a lot of law enforcement stuff and whatnot. We work with companies that will test everybody. A little bit of feedback is that they're a little loud, but I have shot it. I mean, there is no blowback. I mean, there definitely isn't any blowback on their system. But yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe they're.
The way they're doing it is different.
Even less restrictive, so that maybe they haven't really balanced that muzzle and out of ear stuff, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too much flow. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but I mean, at the end of the day, the way they're doing it is a little bit different than us.
Okay.
I mean, they're using kind of like a monocore system.
It is right.
If I remember, zigzags.
Yeah, it's almost like in the main axial component. There's holes. And then they have
like gas that they argue rotates in these like little, you know, forwards and backwards in these spirally kind of areas at the peaks of this like monocore design.
Yeah.
And they got these what they call them, shredder baffles or something in the front, and But
Yeah, so it's a similar concept, a different implementation. And I was just I was thinking of all the different types of silencers, and out of the people that are doing the super different things with regard to baffle design or lack of baffles, it was you and Next Gen Defense.
yeah.
I couldn't, other than the old reflex designs and the Form 1 stuff you see on Silencer Talk from back in the day.
Really, if I was being honest, there's a few other companies trying things. I don't know how much I could speak on that. I mean, we have sent more than a few. Well, I shouldn't say it. More than a few. We've sent some cease and desist letters. There's some patent violations.
Oh, but I'm talking more like established companies that are winning contracts and showing their stuff. I mean, a guy with a mill and a lathe in his garage can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like some good contenders. And that's not to disparage people that are doing stuff on their own, and it's not to disparage the smaller companies and stuff. But as well as I do in the silencer industry, there's a lot of copycatting.
Yeah. Well, for the longest time, right? Seems like, especially with a lot of our top competitors, right? When I was shopping for cans early on, right, the technology was so stagnant. It seemed like everybody had an Inconel core. It was like check the box, K, durable, right? Inconel or Stella, whatever, check the box. All right, looking at length and weight, and they were all so similar. So it was like, okay, you look at sound. Well, they were all so similar. You ended up kind of really just shopping for a mount, picking a mounting system that was really, really good, and just kind of going from there. And I mean, the industry's, baffle technology has been around for a long time, so you're gonna get a degree of copycatting if something doesn't change. But yeah, we're a little different. We're a little disruptive. There are a few people trying different things. I know there's a few different companies trying different materials. I've even heard of some companies trying things that actually move on the inside, spin around and whatnot.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah. So there's some things going on. People are trying. At the end of the day, I guess all I have to say about that is if you're doing it. If you're not looking at what customers want, if you're not looking at, if you're not driving your requirements for your products based on what end users actually want to see in products, it's fool's errand.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, you probably don't want to ignore.
This is really cool and innovative. Well, it might be, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't matter if it costs more or whatever, we've certainly, the older company especially, certainly suffered to a good degree about that, right? You can be different, but if you're not relative, who cares?
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. So your new 22 silencer, I'm super curious. Is this the one right here?
Yeah.
What is it called?
So
because I'm looking at the serial number.
I'm laughing because name's a little cheesy. It's the Rad 22.
Cool.
So Rad 22.
Okay.
The inside is made up of has these radial grooves.
Oh.
Rad radial. You got it?
That's okay. I'm tracking. Okay.
Cut into the outside edges.
Oh shit.
Of traditional baffles we call flow baffles.
Dude. See, okay, so and just to prove I'm not making this up, I haven't seen this silencer, and I wrote on my paper here because I was very curious about how you were going to tackle the lower pressure gas dynamics of the 22 cartridge, and my first question
with a baffle.
yeah because my first question was is your flow through system more efficient or less efficient because does it scale directly from your centerfire rifle cans? I was like, you can't.
So you're right so that's a good thing you bring that up. So in the Instagram live session we touched on this last time we were here in Silencer Shop and whatnot. We get questions, people, hey, when 9mm, when 45. I'm excited about 9 and 45. We're developing it right now. But some people have asked, and we've done this with our older stuff, why don't you just freaking bore out your rifle stuff to 9mm and call it good?
Yeah, that's not going to work.
At the end of the day, the pressures inside pistol powders burn very differently. And there isn't enough burning to get those gases to travel through the entire layers of the system. So what you end up getting,
lower pressure.
Is a very small bore line of deflectors, very low volume that you're trying to shove 9 through. Basically, at the end of the day, it's freaking loud.
Yeah.
Right? So lower pressures kind of suffer from this. So
sure.
Now 22 doesn't count. 22. You can actually shoot our 5.56 cans on 22, and it sounds great.
Well, there's a lot of volume.
But yeah, 422. Exactly.
You're-
You can shoot 5.7. All these other things. But when it comes to the lower pressures of 22, when you're trying to build something competitive in size, weight, and length for a 22 can, no, it's not like I could have a whole bunch of little tiny little parts in here. So what did we end up doing? Baffles work.
So it looks
But
like
there's also flow through. So it's a simplified version. Instead of having multiple layers of what we would call coils. I mean, these cuts are similar to what you'd see in our Helix models. The difference is there's just this expansion chamber, just like our current can, but there's really only one layer going forward, and it just goes forward until it vents out the cavity.
Do you mind if I hold this expansion chamber?
Yeah,
I wanted to describe this for the listeners, and I'll put some pictures on Instagram of this. So what they've done is, if you can picture something similar to a Nielsen device or booster housing for a, like a centerfire pistol can.
We call it the bird cage.
Bird cage, yeah. They have a bird cage in the front, and the gases are allowed to expand radially out of that bird cage in the blast chamber, and then if you look down the bore of the silencer, or you look along axially, they've machined spiral cuts on the outside of all of these baffles that are sort of like K baffles.
Yeah.
They're sort of like K baffles.
We call them flow baffles.
And they call them flow baffles. So okay, let me ask you this. How does your blowback on this compare to, like, I don't know, a dead air mask or something?
So that's a good question. The reality is, short answer, when it comes to shooting low pressure stuff that is as low pressure as 22, there's really not a lot of blowback. I mean, at the end of the day, all right. So blowback can plague definitely some centerfire and some rifle, calibers and whatnot. Can make your gun dirtier, vastly dirtier. Can increase bolt speeds and cause malfunctions. Especially you jump into belt feds. There's an array of problems that could be induced by blowback. That's why weapon mods were invented, to help with timing and cycling and heavier buffers and all this crap, right? 22s, no.
Well, I will play devil's advocate. I will play devil's advocate in that I will say, because of the dirtiness of the 22 round and the lead fouling and some weapon modifications I've done for little 22 pistols and stuff, like the Ruger Mark III, I have noticed certain 22 silencers have different blowback. And one thing that, and this is a really niche point, but one thing that people do kind of need to worry about with 22 is the consistency or the inconsistency of ammunition. I found that with the CCI standard velocity, ammunition is very consistent, and if you tune a 22 host, especially like a semi-automatic 22 host, to cycle with a very consistent 22 ammunition with your silencer with a blowback that you like, you're good. And if you switch the 22 silencer to a silencer with less blowback, maybe it's not going to function. And so, and it gums up the action because it's super dirty. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I asked. I was like, does this matter?
Let me elaborate on that. So you kind of touched on the dirtiness thing, right?
Yeah.
So all 22s are dirty, right?
Sure.
For the most part, just as a general sense.
Yeah.
They're dirty. Even without a can, they're dirty, right? You're cleaning them a lot. What we noticed, we took bolt velocity testing, right? What we noticed when it came to dead air mask, which we actually used as kind of our standard to test this against, and the Sparrow, popular ones that are quiet and whatnot.
Makes sense.
What we noticed is when it comes to shooting that really low pressure stuff like 22, the blowback is so small that there's really not. In other words, if I'm going to add a ton of flow through to get rid of that tiny bit of blowback, this is going to be a loud little 22 can, right? Which you can't have. Not in the 22 world, right?
Yeah, quiet is king.
Quiet is definitely king when you're buying a 22 can. Yeah. And muzzle numbers as well. Shooting subs, people want to make it very quiet. Yeah. But what we did notice is you step up the pressure, and now everything changes. So maybe higher pressure 22 ammo, but what about 22 mag, 17 HMR?
17 HMR, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 5.7.
5.7,
right?
Yeah.
Now,
for people who use 5.7.
Exactly. Now, the vast majority of people shooting a 22 can are just going to shoot 22 through it. But if you decide to shoot that higher pressure stuff, that's where we start having a bigger advantage because there is a flow through design here. Gas. I mean, I can plug the hole here and blow through the can. You can feel the gas leaking out the front.
So would it work better on a pistol than a rifle?
Well, it works great on everything. But at the end of the day, I'll word it this way: you won't be able to take advantage of the flow through design until you are working with higher pressure. Does that make sense?
I understand.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean that's what that's what I wrote down because that's what I thought, and it seems it's good that I'm not too off base.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not crazy, which is always a good thing to know. Okay. Okay. Awesome. I can't wait to shoot it. We're gonna shoot it here in just a minute, but I have I think I have two questions. I'm just gonna combine them.
Sure.
I want to know, like, independent of these silencers, what's your favorite host weapon for pistol caliber, rifle caliber, and rimfire?
Well, so working on pistol, so I couldn't really. I mean, host for a suppressor.
Yo, absolutely.
Oh, I mean, I've shot some competitors as well. I can't wait till we're done with the pistol can, because I would have to say, I mean, I like 9mm. I like shooting at more than 45. I really dig. I'm kind of a classic guy when it comes to the 9mm pistol caliber carbine stuff. I dig an MP5. I think that's a ton of fun.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to when we can enter that, I guess, arena.
Okay.
As far as my favorites go, I mean, I like ARs. I think you start getting above 5.56, and things are just generally a little loud, even with a can.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that makes you giggle and smile when you're shooting suppressed is shooting subs. I mean, shooting 300 black. AK is pretty decent. Again, 5.56 is decent. Even 7.62 is decent. I mean, but it's not like it's just not the same.
Do you have any particular brand, like any models, if I were to say, what's your favorite 9mm semi-automatic pistol to shoot suppressed?
I'm a Glock guy.
You're a Glock guy. Okay, yeah. Which Glock?
Honestly, I've got my eye on the 19X.
The 19X.
I know I don't want to sound like a cell or whatever it would be. Right?
Well, that's okay.
I don't want to sound like a
there are no wrong answers here.
No, I've shot enough. I like a Glock 19. I like a Glock 17. I have an M&P 9.
A Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson, which I actually really like as well. Okay. When it comes to rifles. I mean, what's your next question?
I was just curious what your favorite silencer hosts were. I always, honestly, silencer guys, you got to notice that some hosts are more enjoyable.
This is just because this is something we're doing a lot more right now because we just came out with this 22 can, but shooting a suppressed 22, there's a whole fun element there.
Hell yeah!
Just being able to, shoot stupid stuff in my backyard or whatever. Just being that quiet, that's just really fun. I mean, that's something
like a Ruger Mark IV.
Oh yeah, Ruger Mark IV. We've got one here. Honestly, this Ruger Precision. We've got a Ruger Precision. So a bolt action little Ruger Precision.
I'm sure that's loud.
Oh, it's so quiet. See that is just a ton of fun. And I like a good Ruger 1022. We have some like CMMG ARs. That's actually really fun. Like a caliber conversion, like 22 or a 22 cool. AR. I don't know, just the way it feels. That's actually really fun too. But something about shooting 22 in general with a suppressor,
it's magical.
I mean, there's a reason that we jumped into the 22 market. I know it's the most saturated market, but the reality is, I mean, a lot of people, it's their first can, and it's really fun. It's really fun.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. What's your favorite silencer manufactured by a competitor?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, it would probably be a toss-up between Rugged and Dead Air.
Do you have any particular models?
I mean, I like 30 cal can.
Sure.
I think they're like a bread and butter can. I think the Sandmans are pretty decent. I really do. I think their mounting system's pretty awesome.
The Chemo?
They both use great mounting systems.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be lying if I wouldn't say that, using tapers and making sure something locked as well didn't influence how we were going to do our mounting system. Rugged makes a solid product too. It's a really close call between the two.
Cool. No, that's good to know. I think a lot of people share those sentiments. Those companies seem to have good service, good products, good performance. They're nice guys.
No, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Cool.
I've met the rugged guys.
Yeah.
We go shooting with them. I've gone to dinner with them and stuff at shows. They're great guys.
Yeah.
I met the, I've talked to Pappas a bunch. I mean, he's local in Utah.
He's okay. He's okay.
He's a pretty cool guy. No, he's okay.
I'm kidding.
He's all right. His sense of humor is pretty good. But yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely some competitors I get along with really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any? I think we covered everything, man.
Oh.
So I think that's really great. I think
No,
that's.
you want to now shoot it? I mean, you mentioned earlier.
No, we're gonna
you haven't
shoot.
Shot anything?
We're gonna totally
let's
shoot
move
all
to that.
your guns now, and I thank you very much. All right. Awesome. Let's go shooting.